How many cameras do I have on me anyway? All right, we're live. Hey, welcome to anybody who's watching remotely. We've got a full house today. If you guys need more chairs, there are a few more chairs in this little back room. Feel free to grab them if you want to come up. Okay. Otherwise, there's 3, 4, 5 up here in the front. You can move them in the back if you want. So get back to my slides here so I can feel like I'm some kind of professional. How about that? So welcome to Lean Startup. I guess I'm going to start out with waiting for my phone to connect to my laptop. Saying thanks to our sponsors. So Startup Venture Loft, Peter right back there. Peter, we got good news. Anne just made a donation to Startup Venture Loft, and
it's got to look like a startup.
It's got to. So she wants us to make the place look pretty, and I said, well, Peter makes it look pretty, so I don't know what else we need to do, but so we got a little money to spend. So thanks.
Anybody else feel free to donate?
Yes, anybody else feel free to donate. Yeah, right. Man, we should have had a matching funds challenge grant. So anyway, thank you so much for that, Anna. It's fantastic. Peter from Startup Venture Loft for providing the space. And I think I can go. Yeah, so here's going to be our agenda today. We're going to do a brief introduction. We'll have Brian talk and do a little bit of Q&A and a little group activity. It'll be awesome. So thank you to Startup Venture Loft. This is a co-working space. If you guys want to know more, you can talk to Peter about it. But if you want a place to kind of collaborate and meet people, I think this is a cool place to do that. Pluralsight is one of our sponsors. They're a video training company. We give away a 1-month membership at the end of the event tonight. Microsoft BizSpark is one of our sponsors. They can get 3 years of free Microsoft stuff. So contact me if you want to do that as part of this group. You kind of get that as part of the benefits. So we can hook you up with a code for that. And then you. So the way we learn about things in Lean Startup, when people are serious about things and they value it, is when they pay for it. So when you contribute, when you sign up for your event, you can chip in, whatever. All of that really helps. Chip into the food fund, whatever we can do to kind of keep this moving and support the community. Great. And then, of course, most of you may have jobs. Talk to your employers. Maybe they would like to sponsor this group. So if you're going to tweet about the event tonight, Lean Startup Minnesota is our Twitter handle. Hopefully, that cool stuff to say. So let's take a really brief. I was just confused by the order of my slides. Let's take a really brief minute and go around and introduce ourselves. So we want to keep this under 5 minutes. So just be brief. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you hope to get from this. Anything that you think is relevant to the group. I'm Dale. I'm one of the organizers. I'm a software developer, and I'm interested in all kinds of stuff. I'm passionate about flying and snowboarding. That's probably all you care to hear about. So, who else wants to go next?
I'm Nina Rhymes, and I work for a security financial group. I'm a program manager, and I'm charged with revitalizing one of our whole life functions.
I'm Carl Becker. I am co-founder of a company called Clearnet. It makes iOS and Android web apps for researchers.
Nice. The pressure's on.
Brian Hawks. I'm fully employed working for a company as a lead engineer. I'm starting up a software business on the side that does reporting and uploading and training of data. So it's my first meeting here, and I'm just trying to kind of learn from what those things.
Yeah, right.
Hey guys, my name's Jade. I'm a current chemist and actually a current bootstrapper. I have been current chemist, future bootstrapper, but I've been picking direction. So I'm just really interested in learning more about applying lean and
Yeah.
John Lamb. I'm a new consultant for ERP systems right now. And I was working at a startup before that ended up going under the wood finance venture. So I was looking at
I'm Mike, and looking at
seller and doing consulting.
Excellent. Welcome. There's seats up here if you want to come up.
Scott Brown, education management, software systems. Also, consulting on the side.
My name is John Kobe, and we're building and I have to say here to check out the scene. My name is Dave Meister. I'm relaunching a business I had 10 years ago. I'm trying to do it right this time, so I'm trying to learn how.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm doing business consulting and then also working on 2 startups, one in skincare and another one in food products.
Hey, I'm Eric. I have a company called Don't Blink. And we build companies. Right now I'm working on 4 different projects. 2 of them have already launched. One is a long ways off. The other is hoping to launch later this year. Thanks, Eric.
I'm Stephen Bruce. I'm a former software engineer and current MBA student at the Carlson School of Management.
I'm Dean Hayes. I work on business development and software startup, and I'm looking for networking and seeing as well.
I'm Joe Meyer, and I'm in the second experiment of a lean startup focused on enterprise collaboration, and just eager to learn from the lean startup community.
Hello, I'm Mike Ostafi. I've been COO and president of 2 ag tech startups in the farm space, and now I'm working on a 3rd in the IoT data analytics platform area.
Jim Carnes, in the midst of launching an asset tracking solution and always looking for ways to be a little bit more efficient and also raising capital.
Yes.
Tim Jones, I'm doing a startup for nonprofit fundraising using the daily deal model.
I'm Scott. I'm co-founder of Motive Arts, and we make video production tools for graphic designers. So, we're in kind of the pre-launch beta phase. So, if you know any graphic designers, I'd love to get to know them.
Excellent. Not everybody.
No. Hi, I'm Henry Carlson. I am launching a service to market U.S. properties to investors in China.
Sweet. Which one?
Hui.
Oh,
Oh.
I'm Linnell Essler, and I'm a graphic designer and looking to expand into the laser engraving cutting services or design. So.
I'm Jim Essler, just finished an MBA over at Bethel. Currently working for Honeywell, their smart homes group, and I'm working with
Kyle Serobi. I'm a full-time student at Edmonton Technical College. Devoted to project management.
I'm Scott Serobi. I'm a consultant in the Java development space, and just here to observe and learn.
My name is Lee George, and I'm in the business of helping all the startups be successful, I guess. I work at the James A. Hill Center in downtown St. Paul. We're a nonprofit that has all sorts of research materials available and runs programs for small business owners and startups. So if you need more information, let me know.
So I haven't been there myself, but they have the 1 million cuts on Wednesday morning, which I've heard fantastic stuff about. So if you get a chance to do that, I've heard good stuff. So, did we get everybody?
Hi, I'm Mike McQuay, and I have a startup called AtDat LLC. I just moved from the idea phase to the operations and building.
Yeah.
And I just secured a license from Wire for some software based on that.
Excellent. All right. So just a quick survey. Who is looking for developers or tech talent? You're looking for a web designer, or graphics designer. So we got like 5 or 6. Who's looking for work? Anybody, any developers looking for work? All right, there you go. You guys know who to talk to. Let me just see if I could ask for some help here before we move on. I want to try to keep on schedule. We're already behind, so it's about 10 to 7. We're, of course, going to get Brian all day. It's my fault we're behind. We're going to give you the full half hour being here, but somebody could just try to let me know on the time. I'm terrible at keeping track of that. So, it's on the website too if you don't remember. Okay, so without further ado, Brian, thank you. Let's welcome Brian to the. And then what I'm going to do is, yeah, I think if you can stand in front of the camera.
As promised, this makes me look thin and handsome.
It does.
Is that right?
Actually, clearly, when I looked at myself on there, it was
perfect. Hey everybody, I'm Brian Abraham, University of St. Thomas. Give you a quick update on who I am, where I've been, a little bit on St. Thomas, and I'll talk about the beginning phases of new venture creation or entrepreneurship, depending on what terminology you use. My background is not too dissimilar from a lot of people's background. I did my undergrad in upstate New York. It might be a little different years. I largely went to college to play ice hockey, played hockey in college, killed 3 or 4 years trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Couldn't figure it out. I actually had a contract to play in Europe. Couldn't fulfill it, blew my shoulder out. Then I was stuck senior year in college thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? So I decided to go to graduate school. So I spent 4 years in grad school trying to figure out what I was going to do when I grew up. Couldn't figure it out. So I started a company with my thesis advisor. That was my first experience as an entrepreneur. Never had any business classes whatsoever. We ran that company for a couple of years, split it in two, sold half of it off. The other half still actually exists today. I'll get to that in a moment about why it should not exist. With that experience under my belt, I thought, wow, man, that was easy. Start a company, run it for a couple of years, sell it off, make a couple of bucks, go do it again. Well, I did it again with far less fanfare. And then I decided to do it a third time, and it didn't go so well. So I decided that I probably should go back to school to learn some of the business things that I really didn't know. And so I went to a school called Babson College. Anybody ever heard of Babson? All right, it's a small school back east. What they're known for is entrepreneurship, and that's what they're known for. They've been ranked #1 for the last 20 some odd years straight in entrepreneurship. So I went there, I studied there, and after leaving there, I started another company that did quite well. I stayed on there actually as an adjunct faculty member, and that was my first foray into higher ed, if you will. So over the years, that was probably around 2000, 2001. So over the years, I did a few stints with big companies, but largely I was the internal entrepreneur in the big company, or I was starting and selling or buying and selling my own companies while engaged with higher ed, whether it be Babson College. I taught at Ohio State for a couple of years. I sold my last company 2 years ago, and as I was selling that company, I took a full-time job in higher ed at Michigan State University. Get to that in a moment. I was there for 2 years trying to start their entrepreneurship programs, and then I switched to come here to the University of St. Thomas, where I am now. I'm the Associate Dean for Entrepreneurship there. Michigan State was an interesting place. If there's a more anti-entrepreneurial place in the United States, I've never seen it. So Michigan itself, it's not lost on me that 100 years ago, it was the epicenter for entrepreneurship in the world. No, and very few people would argue otherwise. Well, it grew up and it became big company atmosphere, and obviously 2008 wasn't good to anybody. At the time, I was running a hedge fund, so I was in the financial industries in 2008. That certainly wasn't very good for me. Michigan really tanked hard. And it's a kind of place, the terminology I use is on the coasts, entrepreneurship is kind of a badge of honor. Outside of the coasts, it varies, but in a place like Michigan, it's that thing you do when you can't get a job. That's kind of how people position it, unfortunately. And it's just because of the way generations grew up there. Now, it is changing at Michigan State and in Michigan, but very, very slowly. Culture change takes years and years and years. So as I was trying to push forward an agenda of entrepreneurship in the state of Michigan, the biggest supporter I had was the dean of the business school. She resigned. She resigned to become dean of the business school at St. Thomas. So she asked me to go with her, so consequently, I'm there. My graduate degree is in chemistry, by the way. My doctor's in chemistry, so there you go. So St. Thomas has a long pedigree of entrepreneurship dating back to about 84, 85. And that is really early on in higher ed for entrepreneurship. Just so you know how it kind of goes in higher ed, with entrepreneurship especially, when a school decides that they're going to teach entrepreneurship, the very first thing that comes up is, whoa, no, not entrepreneurship. You know, it's not a discipline. It doesn't fit anywhere because schools are, much like large companies, they're siloed by departments, right? And entrepreneurship doesn't fit in management or strategy or finance or marketing or any of the others. It's a cross-disciplinary kind of a study. Okay, so usually there's an initial pushback on entrepreneurship. If you get past that, typically the school departments fight over it because after all, money typically falls to students. So if you have students who want to study entrepreneurship, you want more students in your department, therefore you fight for it. Well, that battle has long since been over at St. Thomas. And once you get past those battles, then you get to the point where you actually do good things for the students, which is what you should do in the first place. So since about 1990, St. Thomas has been putting in place a lot of programs for entrepreneurship, which puts us on the forefront of that discipline. And so now that we have a school built and our benefactors giving us a pile of money to push this forward, you're going to see a lot more programming come out of St. Thomas, not just for our students, but also for the community. So stay posted on that. Okay, early stage entrepreneurship. Some of you know this stuff by heart, others of you may not. The very first step in entrepreneurship, of course, is deciding whether or not that's what you want to do with life. And that's a very difficult decision to make. Usually people hear the stories about Richard Branson and others, the romanticized stories of entrepreneurship. And they're romanticized because they're looking backward after a career of success. Okay? The failure rates of entrepreneurship are quite high. Typically, startup to year one, almost 100% make it. Okay? Year 1 to year 5, depending on whose study you read, it's like 75% make it. Year 5, nosedive. Nosedive for a couple of reasons. Either you don't make it because you just can't scale for whatever reason, can't get funding, can't source the production, can't find the people, a million reasons why you can't scale. Or you decide, hey, I've been at this 5 years, I can make more money working with somebody else, and you give up. That's typically why that 5-year point hits and goes right down. It's very rare for a company to go out of business because of lack of customers. That is hardly ever the case. Okay? And I'll get to that in a moment. Let's say that you decided that you want to start your own business. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to bite the bullet and take that risk. Okay? The first thing you go into is the whole opportunity recognition phase. And that is a lot more entailed than just a buzzword. Okay? You think you have a good idea, but I'll tell you what, if you think you have a good idea, lots of other people have already thought about it. Okay? If you see an opportunity, you're probably not the first seeing that opportunity. The question is, are you the right person to capitalize on that opportunity? Are you doing the right research to ensure that it really is an opportunity and not just an idea? And here's the difference. Ideas are a dime a dozen. An opportunity requires you to do the formalized planning. And I know that business plans are passé these days, but I'll tell you what, the planning is essential. The reason business plans are passé is because venture capitalists don't like to read business plans, okay? For a couple of reasons. One, they don't invest in new ventures. There are 1,000 venture capitalists in the United States. There are under 100 who say they invest in early stage in the United States. Worldwide, there was a study that said there are less than 80 worldwide who invest in early stage meaning pre-revenue. So your target market is not the venture capitalists. No wonder they don't want to read a business plan. But when a VC says, we don't want a business plan, we want a PowerPoint deck, everybody all of a sudden says, oh my God, no more business plans. That's ridiculous. The plan is a culmination of the planning, and you can't get away with not doing the planning. What you need to do in the planning is pretty straightforward. Pick up any textbook, and you'll find it. You've got to do your demographic analysis, your psychographic analysis, okay? You need to do your competitive analysis. Who's out there selling to somebody already? You need to take a look at things like, how many of you heard of Michael Porter? Okay, you need to do your Porter's 5 forces. What are the forces in this marketplace? How many of you know what a SWOT analysis is? You need to do SWOT. Pest analysis? Fewer people, pest? Political, economic, okay. You need to do your pest analysis. These are the things you need to do to verify that your idea indeed is an opportunity. Now, everybody does that a little bit differently. I always start with a spreadsheet. The reason is, in part, because I'm a scientist, and if I can't measure it, it doesn't exist. All true. Okay, so I start with a spreadsheet. The reason I start with a spreadsheet is simple, really. I start with what's the first line you look at when you start a business in the spreadsheet? Anybody? Revenue. What do you think about when you think about revenue? Customers. Even before that, what am I going to sell?
Product
For how much? To who? Right? That's what you think about. When you start thinking about that, you start thinking about, well, who in the heck are they buying from now? Right? And that leads you to what? Competition. What's the competition doing? How are they priced? That's just from one line. That's just from the revenue line. Then you go to expenses. You start thinking about what's it going to cost me to execute this business model. Right? You can get your whole business plan, in my opinion, from a simple spreadsheet analysis. And that's usually what drives my thinking, is the spreadsheet. People will tell you that the executive summary is something you write last. That's not true. The executive summary is something you finish last. Okay? It's an iterative process, but you don't start it last, you finish it last. Okay? The whole business plan is a working concept. And the adage in business school is, well, let me ask you the question. When is a business plan out of date? As soon as it comes off the printer. Yeah. Right? But it's the planning. It's the planning that is key. Okay. So let's say you have an idea. Let's say you have verified to the best you can that it really is an opportunity and you want to start a business. Don't do the official formation of the business until you absolutely have to. The reason being, I've seen more entrepreneurs fail because of things that they do, or more importantly, they don't do in their first 3 months of operation that kill them 12 months down the road. Give you an example. My first company, the one we split in two, the one that we kept running, we made every mistake in the book. We knew we had to have workman's comp insurance, right? So we got it. Well, we had an employee in New Jersey. Turns out New Jersey only takes workman's compensation insurance from 8 vendors only. The vendor we had wasn't going to tell us that. We didn't find out until we got a $10,000 fine from the state of New Jersey in like month 4 of operation. Okay? We didn't know that we had to file a 941 until it was too late. We got a fine for not filing our 941s. We didn't know what it meant to be in good standing with the state. Found that out the hard way. The way we found that out, we found out about being in good standing and the D&B rating at the same time. And that was when we were trying to scale. So when you try and scale, there's a saying about growing broke, where good news, bad news. You get a lot of orders or you get a lot of customers. Great, they love your product, they love your service. So you got to execute against it. Well, typically you have a cash outlay before you can get your money in. unless you're doing pre-charges and things of that nature. Well, let's say you're net 30, okay, and you're trying to scale. Well, what you'll first try and do is to go to your vendors and negotiate better terms. Well, the easiest thing for your vendor to do is to look you up on D&B and to look you up with state to find out if you're in good standing or whether or not you're creditworthy. And if you're not, they're not going to give you payment terms. Okay? Unfortunately, these are the things historically that business schools don't teach. Business schools feel that it's too vo-tech and it's not of academic worthy to be teaching these things to students. I say that's a bunch of bullshit. And everybody in this room needs to know the nuts and bolts of how to start a business without getting yourself in trouble. I've had more students get sued by employees in their first year of operation and not win because they didn't have an employee handbook. It is so easy to go out to docstock.com and get an employee handbook and spend a weekend revising it for the purposes of your company to avoid that altogether. There are about 100 things you need to do as a company in the first 3 months. And any one of those things you don't do properly could potentially be fatal. The easiest thing to do is to get a venture capital checklist of what they look for. And if you don't have all those, then you're probably a little bit at risk. Yes?
I was going to ask you where you get that list.
Just Google venture capital checklist. Find the longest one you can, and that'll give you everything you need. Okay? It doesn't tell you how to do it, but it'll give you everything you need. Okay. Other things that I see entrepreneurs fail over, picking the wrong battles. For example, I've walked in on student groups who've been immersed in a debate over font or color for the logo. Come on. Sell a product first. Let's talk about the logo later. Don't get immersed in those things. Don't get immersed in things that you should give to somebody else to do. Spend a little bit of money to have professionals do some of that stuff for you. Focus on what you're best at. Know what you're best at first, and then focus on that. And if accounting isn't your thing, my God, don't do it. For a couple $100, you can get somebody to set up your balance sheet. You could spend days on end trying to figure out how to set up your opening balance sheet. Or somebody for a couple $100 can just set that thing up for you. So be smart about your time. Use a law firm. You really should. And here's why. I've started, so I counted them up last year. I've been involved in 100 startups. I've been co-founder in 15 and founder in 10. If I were to start a company today, and eventually I will start another company, it's inevitable, I will still use a law firm for the simple reason that I don't know what the new laws are. Things change. Tax codes change. Okay? I may think I know it all, but I'd like to think I'm smart enough to know that I really don't. So I will actually reach out for the right kind of expertise, and I will not pay top dollar for it. Okay? At most, I'll pay a law firm $1,000. At most, I'll pay an accounting firm $500 to get things started. You don't have to pay top dollar, but God, get the right expertise to get your stuff set up properly. Because here's what happens. 6 months down the road, you'll be like me, getting hit with these fines from the IRS or the state. And you'll spend all your time trying to figure out what the heck did I do wrong? How do I fix this? And as soon as you think you have it fixed, you get more paperwork in. And before you know it, you're fighting fires instead of doing what you really want to do, which is to grow your business. That's the reality of starting a business. It is not romantic. Trust me on this. If somebody has to clean the toilets, you're doing it. Okay? That's just the way it is. Maybe 20 years from now, once you've made it big, you can sit back and forget about all that tough stuff that you started off with and think about how wonderful the journey was. But that will be because you're not thinking about the first 2 or 3 years.
So what would you recommend in terms of timing, setting up the legal structure and the accounting and all that stuff? Is that pre-revenue? Is that,
yeah.
Like when, tell me about the timing piece.
Accounting is definitely pre-revenue, and here's why. I mentioned the opening balance sheet. That's the trickiest one. If you mess that up, you're screwed. Okay, trying to unscrew that thing up is really hard. Okay, so make sure you get your accounting set up first and use whatever you want. I can tell you for sure that I would never use anything but QuickBooks Online, and I don't get paid by them, but that's all I use is QuickBooks Online for all my businesses. Okay, it's easy, it's simple. They got 24-hour support, so I'd set that up for sure right away. Make sure you use the right legal entity. Meaning, a lot of people like to say, oh, just form an LLC. Well, that might be the right entity to form, but if you're going to raise professional money, it's probably not the right entity to form. And quite frankly, forming an LLC is a little bit more complicated than a C Corp, because with an LLC, you need an operating agreement and a membership agreement, and each of those are yay thick. So if you have an LLC but you don't have an operating agreement, or if you have an LLC and you don't have a membership agreement, you better get one, okay, because you did something wrong in the startup phase. Okay, C Corps are a lot easier, a little bit less paperwork, but to properly form a company, there's no exaggeration. You're looking at a binder that thick, just the paperwork. You've got board resolutions, you've got naming people to your board. If it's an LLC membership agreement, you've got operating agreements, you've got shareholder agreements, partnership agreements, you've got employee handbooks, you've got, you name it, you got it. So I would, as soon as you know you're going to start a company, get that going.
So you're saying do that before I even know if I have something that somebody will buy?
Well, no. No, you have something to buy, don't make the sale.
Okay.
Right? Because you also have to take a look at insurances.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're going to sell something, there's an issue there potentially that you need to look at in terms of insurances. You may need liability insurance, probably will. You should definitely look at business liability insurance. You may need product liability insurance depending on what you're selling. Okay? If you have a board of directors, likely not as a startup, and I would recommend against it. But if you do have a board of directors, you will need D&O insurance, directors and officers insurance. That'll run you between $2 and $5 grand a year for about $5 to $10 million of coverage. So before you sell a product to a customer, you got to make sure this stuff is squared away so you don't get in trouble. Odds are, if you sold the product to a customer already, you're going to be fine. But it's that 1 in 100 case that I see where I think, God, I wish you would have just taken out that product liability insurance. You wouldn't be being sued for $10 million.
Well, they'd be sued, but they'd have insurance for it.
They have insurance for it, right? Exactly. Exactly.
Brian, board of directors insurance, what would that be?
D&O, directors and officers.
D&O.
D&O. D as in David, O as in Oscar. Yeah. Yeah. Now here's the rub with D&O insurance. What's that? No, they don't, and it's hard to get as a startup. You pay a premium for it.
I don't really know what that is.
D&O insurance. So if you have directors and officers in your company, anybody who's a senior person or let's say a family member, you want to make sure that they are covered for anything your company does. So if your company does something that results in a liability, you want to make sure your directors and officers are covered by insurance. That's what that is. And business liability insurance, similar kind of a thing, more for the owners. There are a lot of insurances, unfortunately. So you've done all your due diligence, you've done your massive pile of paperwork, you've hired your lawyer, you've hired your accountant, you're off and running. So now it's a matter of finding talent. Now here's the other thing that people have a hard time with, equity for Keystone employees. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with letting go of some equity. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs try and value that equity. Okay, company's worth zero. Just cement that in your mind. It's worth zero until there's a liquidity event that tells you that there is something there of value. An liquidity event could be a sale, it could be an IPO, which doesn't happen very often these days, but it's also an investment from a third party. That's validation of what your company is worth. Okay? Until such time as there is some infusion of cash from a professional person into your company, you can run all the discounted cash flow analysis you want. It doesn't mean anything. Okay? I'm not saying give equity freely to your employees, but come up with a policy that makes sense. Now, when you come up with a policy that makes sense, such as at the outset, you have so many warrants or so many options, and they vest over so many years, depending on the level of person that you're hiring in. So you have management, you have non-management. So come up with a policy that compensates your employees with some level of equity. And this is in part because you don't want to pay them fair market value for their services, right? Because you're a startup. You'd rather compensate them with equity. But don't forget to have a stock buyback agreement. The worst thing you can do is to give out equity to first-on employees, knowing that they may or may not stay, and letting them go out the door holding equity to your company. For a number of reasons. One, who knows what really happened with Facebook? I didn't see the movie. Who knows what really happened with them? They didn't want to go public. They were forced to go public because of the number of shareholders they had. Essentially, there were other reasons, but that was the big reason. If you have, it used to be like 300 shareholders or more and a certain amount of revenue, then you could be required by the SEC to go public. Okay, so that's one reason. Let's hope you all have that problem. Let's hope you all have the Facebook problem, where you have to go public because you're so darn successful. Here's the other problem. If somebody wants to invest in your company or buy your company, those, by the way, are also good problems to have. You need to make sure you can track down your shareholders. Okay? If you have an employee one who left 5 years ago, you may not know who that employee is. But it's incumbent upon you to make your best efforts to track that person down. So make sure you have that in your documentation. Here's our agreement. If your stock vests and you leave, here's the agreement to buy it back. Make sure you have that. Here's another trick that you need to know. If you have a partner, this is kind of important. I ran into it. If you have a partner and your partner passes away, what happens to your partner's equity?
Those are the heirs, isn't it?
Those are the heirs. What happens if it goes to a spouse that doesn't really like you very much? She made my life, she could make your life a living hell. Okay, so make sure you have some insurance against that. It could be an agreement, but again, there's insurance again. There's also insurance against that as well. There, I know State Farm has it. What they will do is value your company in a partnership, and if your partner passes away, then the spouse who inherits the company can cash it out for the insurance policy. So make sure you think through those things. That one stung me.
Are those buy-sell or keepers?
What's that?
Are those buy-sell or keepers?
Buy-sell.
The one that you said with insurance on.
Buy-sell.
Buy-sell.
Yeah. And I know State Farm has it, and others have it as well. I used State Farm last go around, but I didn't have it the first time.
What product did you use? Was it term or?
No. Good question. It was about 10 years ago. I can't remember. But you should definitely look into that if you have a partner. Questions?
It's a lot of information to take in.
There's a lot that happens in the early stages.
Yeah.
It gets a little boring after a while, to be honest. In my opinion, the reason I'm the kind of person who likes startup to about 10 million. After that, I get kind of a little bored.
Yeah.
Getting the next year's 15 to 20% or something like that is okay. Well, let's do more marketing. Let's do more selling. Let's do more advertising. Let's be at more trade shows. That's great. That's not a lot of fun for me. Yeah.
So about 80% to the point of getting my business launched. Up to that point, I got my CPA, I got my lawyer, and I paid the marketing company to get the kind of the business documents ready to go. Now I'm several $1,000s in debt. I having an LLC, a two-person partnership, and we both chip in about as much as we can afford to chip in at this point in time.
Yep.
Hard to find people that want to work free.
Yep.
What are the options prior to having a selling product?
Yep.
Getting some extra money.
Yeah. So your phases of financing, as you're probably aware, step one is you already did it. It's your money, and you've got to have your money in. I don't care if it's $100 or $100,000. It's got to be some percentage of your liquid net worth, so that other people will know that you have skin in the game. Okay. The second phase of financing are the 3 Fs. We all know what the 3 Fs are?
Yes.
Family, friends,
and fools.
Fools. You have the family to get the friends and the fools. Okay, that's the next step of financing. After that, you're probably at a maturity level where you can look at a couple of different options. The next phase is not venture capital, by and large. Okay, because they tend to, venture capitalists largely finance growth. Largely. Now there are some early stage folks, but not many, as I mentioned. Okay, after your family, friends, and fools, you're looking at either maybe an SBA loan, maybe some grants, things of that nature. But you're also looking at the angel capital community. And that's tricky because the angel capital community is fragmented. And there are levels of sophistication. I don't mean smart or not smart. I mean organized or disorganized. Okay. There are some angel groups that will meet like clockwork every single month, and they'll bring 5 deals to the table, and they'll make a decision to invest in one. Okay? There are other angel groups that have been together for years who might make an investment once every 3 years, and they don't meet regularly. They meet whenever they feel like it. Okay? So that's what I mean by sophistication. It's all over the map. So I would say after family, friends, and fools, I always look largely for non-dilutive capital, grants, for example, loans with good terms. Okay, and these days the terms are great, especially if you're a veteran, especially if you're a disabled veteran, especially if you're a female disabled, especially if you're a Native Alaskan Indian, female disabled veteran. You're set. You know what you want. Okay, so there are government monies you can tap into. You should look at for sure. Yeah, then after that, if you're not at the point, if you still need money, you're not at the point where it's venture capital capable, you're looking at a couple different possibilities. Probably the most common is vendor financing. That's where it's important to have good credit terms. Okay, that's important. That's where it's important that your D&B is up to date. That's important where you're in good standing. You've been making your payments to your vendors. Because you may need to go to your vendors and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go from $1.25 million in sales. It doesn't matter if it's a product or a service, really. It's just a different type of vendor. I'm going from 1.25 to about 3 this year. I can't do that under net 45. I need to be net negative 30 or something of that nature. You start that negotiation. That's the most common that I've seen at that point in time, if you can't get venture financing.
Retail banks doing small business loans anymore?
Credit unions are. Retail banks are doing SBA loans because they're only on the hook. The bank itself, I think, is only on the hook for about 25 or 30% of it. And then the rest is on the government. But you've got to pick. You know, some banks do them, some banks don't. But credit unions have been pretty active lately as well. So we look into that.
Don't you usually have to personally guarantee a lot of these?
Yeah.
So what you have has to be worth something too.
Well, how they evaluate your worth is kind of funny. All they want to know is that you're willing to personally guarantee it, and then they do look at your assets. But as long as you're willing to sign the dotted line, personally guaranteeing it, then usually, if they want to invest in you, that's not going to hang it up. Let's put it that way, because they can't impound your 1977 Chevy Impala.
The other institutions with nonprofits with Syncom's that institution also does some initial investment.
Not the nonprofit. We have a nonprofit institute, But then we have the Norris Institute as well. The Norris Institute is essentially an angel fund, for lack of a better term. It's a captive angel fund. So a captive fund is a fund that resides within a certain entity for a specific purpose, as opposed to an open fund with LPs looking for the best deals possible. So the Norris Institute is about, well, it's fully invested right now, but it's about to be reinvested another couple of $1 million. We allocate in amounts of between $50,000 and $100,000 seed capital to Minnesota-based companies, with a preference toward companies that have an affiliation with St. Thomas. That's the Norris Institute.
They came up with some really nice companies. I saw a slideshow of some of the companies that came out of that institution.
Yep.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very creative.
Yeah, that reports into my school. Yeah, they've made some decent investments. A couple that haven't gone, lately have not gone so well, but that's the way it goes.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. Free pizza.
Yeah. All right, thanks. I think we'll cut it off there so we can stay on time, but really appreciate it, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, because it was very interesting to me to hear a lot about what you talked about. I guess anybody want to call out what stood out for them? And what Brian said, anything particularly you want to share that you thought was interesting?
Just see the level of detail that you need to pay attention to before you get burned.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Well, things can go wrong, right? And it's a litigious society. So. The thing that stuck out for me was something I'd be curious to hear more about is that most companies don't fail because of lack of customers. I've seen differing data than that. So I'm trying to tell me a little bit about how you see that applying. I see a lot of companies will start stuff. They'll get some customers, but they can never really kind of get enough to keep going. Is it because they're not trying to scale, or they're not scaling?
Yeah,
or is it?
It's a matter of scale. And what you see is a lot of those companies, they can stay in existence if they want to, but when you hit the 5-year mark or thereabouts, you ask yourself, is it really worth it? So they don't leave because they don't have customers. They leave because they may not have enough or they can't scale high enough. That's typically what happens. But usually the reason businesses always last a year, for the most part, is because most people don't launch the business until they know that they have customers, right? And then they typically sustain themselves for a year, and then 2 years, and 3 years. And then it's a matter of how many customers. And the percentage of companies that grow broke actually is larger than the percentage of companies who give up.
Okay.
So the percentage of companies who grow broke and file for bankruptcy because their cash flow can't keep up is higher than the percent who give up. And that's the one thing to remember as well. There's only one financial statement that matters. That's the statement of cash flow.
Right. Okay. That's helpful because so you mentioned earlier at about the 5-year mark, about 70% of the. So I'm going to have some stuff.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's fine.
And about 10% of them are kind of at that profitable point, right? That's where they end up kind of being able to make money, grow, and sustain. Now, what I found, or the way I said that, is more companies fail, numbers-wise, for lack of customers than for failure to implement. So, meaning at the 5-year mark, they don't have enough customers that they're making more money than they would if they went and got another job or if they did that. That's that kind of fall-off point. So, take that with a grain of salt. But the point is that it's not about what you're building. The challenge isn't necessarily, I don't think, about the technical ability to build something. It's about the cash flow to build it, having the customers to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. And I also think there's a lot of companies who build stuff that people don't want. Do you see that at all? I've talked to a lot of people in the course of going through this group where they've said, I've been working on my startup for 3 years. I've presented it to this company, that company, this company. I don't have any customers yet. I see that. Do you see that?
Yeah, and there's a guy, you may have heard of Stephen Blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, he espouses talk to 100 customers before you think about really launching your company. It's not new, but his 100 customers is kind of new, and I agree with that.
So one of the things I want to talk about today is like, who is your customer, right? How do you figure out who your customer is? And bear with me, I'm sitting in front of somebody who teaches entrepreneurship for a living, talking about how to do some entrepreneurship, and I am not nearly as experienced. So I'm hoping Brian will chime in here and help me provide the right information if I make any mistakes. But so who is your customer, right? That's the thing that you need to know. Who's going to pay you? And have you talked to 100 people about your idea? Is it going to really work, right? And so how do you do that? Anybody? Oh, let me start out first. Who here has, so raise your hand if you have a startup that you've been working on for more than a month. Okay, pretty good percentage of you. So keep your hands up. Keep your hand up if you have customers, either free or not. Okay, and who has paying customers? All right, so we've got 3 people, 4, 5. 5 in the group that have paying customers. So those are the companies that you want, right? You want a company with a paying customer. So how do you get there? Well, you talk to 100 people, or you kind of go through the process, right? But I guess the first most important thing is to actually build something, start working on it. So Lean Startup says that you want to go through this cycle, this build, measure, learn cycle, as fast as possible. Do you want me to go back one? So Lean Startup says you want to go through this as fast as possible. You want to shorten this build, measure, learn cycle as much as you possibly can. So how do you do that? Anybody have any ideas of how to do that really short? So you're building a product, you're building a software service, whatever it is. So a bunch of you raised your hand that you have a startup. Who wants to chime in?
Facebook ads.
Facebook ads. What's your startup?
PetDad LLC. It's patient engagement and patient data analytics.
Patient data. And who's your customer?
All consumers that have patient data.
All consumers who have patient data.
About 80 million.
Okay. Whenever I hear, don't do that. Whenever I hear all, I kind of think like, unless you're solving death and taxes, everyone is not your customer.
Right, it's 80 million
I don't know. Okay. Okay. And so those are the people who are paying you, or?
No, that's how I would generate customers. I'm sorry, I don't have.
No, I'm asking like who, when you have customers. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry, but and when you have customers, who will pay for it? Where will the revenue come in?
From the consumers.
From the consumers, so a patient who has data, or a doctor.
Well, there's another phase to include doctors and hospitals. We're going to start with the consumers first, and then move into the hospital.
Okay, cool. So how would you go about building something like that that maximizes or kind of minimizes your time through this build, measure, learn loop?
Well,
sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that's kind of.
So I had the idea, and to jumpstart the build, I bought a license, and now I'm going to. It needs to be productized because it was from a research institute. So I'm going to code the productization.
Okay.
And then I'm going to measure when I get Google ads and do my marketing campaign, Facebook ads, and Twitter campaigns.
Sure.
And Facebook campaigns. I'm going to measure the success, and then go back to the drawing board to make it more appealing.
Okay. So how long is that going to take?
Hoping to complete that cycle in like 6 months.
6 months. Okay. So you're going to be able to go through the build, measure, learn cycle twice a year.
Yeah.
Right. So is there anything you can? So this is what I'm saying. Is that when you start thinking about that, what if you can't do that? You know, kind of challenge yourself as you're thinking about your ideas. How can you go through that build, measure, learn cycle in a week?
Everybody's a patient.
Everyone's a patient in this room, but maybe what it is that breaking down the tasks that you need to do into what do I need to learn this week to keep my business moving forward? Does that make sense to everybody?
The second one, too slow every 6 months, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not go to the internet, a lot of that is expense. Why not? There's a ton of patients here in cities, and why not simply find out who you could wait with the end that would buy it before you put it out on Facebook.
Yeah, there's probably lots of ways that you can go about doing it.
Local, quicker, faster.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. So I can drill down a little bit.
I don't want to have you drill down into too much detail. Sorry, I'll stop you there because all I want you to do is to start thinking about what can you do to shorten that cycle, right? So you've got a plan already for 6 months. So what can you do to make that shorter? So I'll give you I'll come back around to you in a few minutes. Anybody else want to talk about your startup briefly? Anybody? Carl, Jade, sorry. Nick, I knew the jacket was tied in there somewhere. Jade?
Yeah, so we're planning in hopefully just a couple weeks here once we get some of the business structure sorted out. To just go ahead and make a dummy landing page. Our startup is a digital tip jar, but it's pretty critical to know how many people will actually tip at what price point.
Yeah.
We're aiming for super small, like 25 cents. So it feels more like clicking play instead of filling out a lead form.
Okay.
But I still need to know how many people will actually do it. But you don't actually have to build them. You just see how many people would. So just kind of a customer survey.
Okay. Carl, you want to?
I'm just looking at your diagram there, and like certain of those things are pretty immovable, I would guess. And the measure stage is probably, depending on who you're going to measure, like you can't change that too much. You can set what your window is. Like I'm going to measure for a day, or something to measure for a month.
Right.
Things like built-in code are very much under your own control, so you can try to skim that as little or as quick as you can. Ideas you can all come up with ideas pretty quick. But the measured data learn seems like almost a fixed amount of time. So the code and the build seems like a place to check.
Although going through that, I was just triggered. You can do an A/B. So you could wrap it. You can do an A/B approach, ABCD approach, which is really cheap. You can set up an A web, a B web, a C web, all at the same time. So instead of a linear experiment, you could put the scope of hypothesis.
It extends your build time then, but that might, by extending your build a little bit, you might shrink your measure a lot.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's exactly, or what you're trying to measure might be something that's really small. So you can have something out for a day or whatever. That measurement could vary. So if you're doing a bunch of stuff out with Google and it's got to run for 6 months, it's got to run for 6 months. But you can probably think about things. So the point is I think breaking things down. We do this in software development, breaking things down into really, really small, like incredibly small things. The more you practice it, the more you try to break things down into smaller chunks of work, the more, the better you are at it, the more you're able to kind of go through that cycle and kind of pick up some bit of learning, because it isn't always a big chunk that you need to learn. So the way I like to think about it is like this, right? The amount of time that you spend actually in that cycle of doing something versus thinking about what your customer would do. Like, don't theorize, don't project, don't I think my customer is going to click on this. I think 1 in 5 people are going to donate. But rather go out there and measure it. Get some real live data to do that. So that's my thought process on it. Now, I have a certain way that I like to do things, and it's probably not the right way. It's probably just the way that I like to do things. So I'm also interested to hear what you guys think about the way that you want to do it.
With what I'm doing, I'm able to go talk directly to the customer, figure out what they want, go home, build it maybe the next day.
Yeah.
And then I go to the retailer and say, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And that's worked very, very well because I turn the crank pretty fast.
Yeah, it gets you through that cycle really quick. You get something in front of the customer who can say, yeah, okay. Something, John?
No.
Okay.
One of the things that we're processing right now in ours
is we have 3 different levels of customers in my business, and we're trying to figure out the experience from each one of them. Because I think the mistake I made in the past was saying I have a great idea, and it was my perception of the idea.
Yeah.
And I had to switch it completely around and say, okay, forget about what I think about it. What are these people coming in? What are they going to see? What's their experience going to be? And then building my program around their experience versus my cool idea.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I run into that a lot in the software world. About, a lot of people you deal with, especially you get a group of developers around, they're all like, I would never click on that button if that's blue. It's got to be a red button. Only people click on red buttons, or whatever the thing is. There's a lot of strong opinions in that, and it's really hard to just be like, I am not the customer. I am not the person paying the bill. I am just the guy. I'm the carpenter there, like pounding the nail in. That's all I'm here to do. Let the customer figure out what they want. So, anybody else want to add anything? That's right.
Yeah, I realized from my neighbor's comment here that first 6 months is actually 2 cycles. So the first cycle includes a Kickstarter campaign, but I don't care if it's successful or not. The only goal is to get beta customers, free beta customers, so a customer lives there, people touch it really.
Okay.
And that would be a cycle, and then the Google Words and AdWords are an app and then after it's built up.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I think listen.
Good.
I think listening is critical. It's easy to have your own bias when you're talking to your customer, like, well, isn't this your problem?
Yeah.
Do you want to fix that? Instead of actually listening to the problems that they want you to solve.
Yeah, that's actually interesting too. That triggers a thought with me. Is I've gone around with people to do a little bit of customer interviewing, and it's really hard. Like the natural tendency is to be like, here, look at my app. If you're in a restaurant and you see this on the counter, would you click on it to donate 20? I'm just going to pick on Jade's idea here. Would you click on it to tip your waitress 25 cents, right? And what are they going to say? Oh yeah, of course I will, right? And then when the app comes out and it's right there in front of them, they're not going to click on it.
A really fun challenge for that is figure out how to ask the question so that it can't be answered yes.
Right, or even better yet, like what I like to do early on in the very early stages is when I talk to a customer is just tell me about your day, tell me about what you do, tell me about what goes on. And if they talk about like, oh, it's every time I go tip my waitress, it's terrible. I have to have, I got to like take out my wallet, and I only got a 20. And, then maybe that person might have the problem I'm thinking of. And then if I talk to 10 or 100 other people like that, do I have a similar group of people with a similar problem that I can deliver a similar solution to at a similar price, right? That's what I'm trying to do with the startups. So, talking with the customer without leading them is another really challenging thing that I think I'm not, I haven't certainly mastered it, but I've tried to help, try to get better at it. And not leading them at all is really hard, because sometimes you're like, I'm sure they have this problem, but they're not bringing it up. So that just means it's not important to them, or they're not thinking about it that day. Maybe you can talk to them that day.
Yeah, well, I found through the process that the feedback itself hasn't been so important. So what the feedback has done is reflected how good my questions are.
Yeah.
And so when I get like seemingly weird feedback or inconsistent, then it's a problem with my question in the first place.
Yeah.
When I ask a new question, everything is clear, then I understand why.
Right.
It's about finding the question as opposed to finding the right feedback.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the right question in the first place, you're not going to.
That's right. It's fun. It's weird how that works, right? If I don't ask people about things.
On your little sign here,
yeah.
It's interesting, the theory that things that are in motion tend to stay in motion, and the things that are stationary tend to stay stationary.
Yeah.
Well, if you focus all the time on theorizing, pretty much you get immobilized by the theorizing.
Yeah.
But if you go out and just do things, it's amazing how things start to fall into place. Because the more you do things, the more things work. The more you do things,
yeah,
and so on. So I've been taught of that up there.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a quote that I love. I can't remember who it is. Maybe you know, Brian. Is no idea survives contact with the first customer, or something like that. You know, it's like whatever. I can't tell you how many companies I've talked to, companies that I've worked for. So Pearson VUE, the company I used to work for, and Scott used to work for, great company, world's largest computer-based testing company. I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue. People use the software like every second of every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. It's like a huge company, right? When I started there, they didn't do testing at all. They were doing training locator where you would call in to the call into the call center of the company, and then they would tell you where you could go find training from Microsoft or whatever. Then the internet came along, and this whole kind of being able to find things got really easy, and calling into a call center is not so hard anymore. So they saw the writing on the wall and did a pivot. We call it a pivot, but you know, they went to Novell with 7 PowerPoint slides and got walked out with $2 million to build a testing system. So their strategy actually is this idea of, I think they call it tenant customers, which is they go get a cut. So it's interesting you talked about don't sell anything first. Like Clark Porter from Pearson VUE has done this 6 or 7 times with, he'll go in and pitch an idea to what they call a tenant customer or a series of tenant customers, get them all to prepay for multiple years of service, and then go build it. So he'll sell it before they even have anything. It's kind of an interesting.
What I meant was don't sell something unless you have the company formed and the insurances and all that. Otherwise, you can get your butt sued.
And I think, yeah, and to be fair, I'm sure that he had all that legal stuff figured out. Okay. Anybody else? I'm sorry, I missed. I think we missed. No? So let's try to make it a little bit more concrete about, and this is going to be what I'm going to call the wrong way, or what I'm thoroughly convinced is the wrong way to do things. This is what I did since January 1st. I wanted to be able to show what I think is the wrong way to do things. So RE broker list. So one of the things that was, I quit my job on, at the end of the year, and I was working for Pearson VUE, and I didn't really have a plan at all. I just was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. So on the 30th of December, I thought, oh, I need to go sell some rental properties because I'm not going to have a job for a while, and I should get my real estate license to sell some of my rental properties so that I can keep most of the money myself. I'm kind of greedy that way. So one of the things that you have to have as a real estate salesperson, you have to work for a broker. Somebody has to supervise you, make sure that you're following the law and all this stuff. This is a state law, it's required. And I had my real estate license years ago, and getting it again, I remembered like it's a real pain in the ass to find a broker. I don't know where they are. I know Edina Realty, Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, and somebody else. Remax, there you go, thank you. I always forget Remax. So I know 4, but I'm sure that I don't want to work for those 4 companies, right? I'm positive. Edina Realty's got 2,000 realtors. You know, they're like, I'm not going to work for them, right? That's not what I'm interested in. So how do I find the broker who's got like 4 salesmen and, you know, is looking to add one, doesn't mind that I'm going to do rental property and stuff. So I just thought on the 30th, I thought of this. I'm like, oh, I'll create a website where you can go out and look up on a little map where brokers are, and then you can see who they are and contact them. And then the broker themselves would pay for, because, you know, to give you an idea, if a broker hires one agent, and that one agent sells one house in 1 year, just one house a year, that's $1,200 to that broker. So I know that I can charge a broker $1,200 a year to be on my site, because he's going to break even with one guy with one sale, or one salesperson with one sale. I'm assuming I can charge. So rather than go talk to brokers, rather than go talk to 100 customers, I'm an IT guy. What do? I build stuff, right? I'm the guy with the hammer, I have my hammer and nails and my carpenter action. I'm going to go build something. So I went and built the site. But I did something because I'm kind of, you know, kind of like lean startup So I didn't want to spend 6 months or very much time at all. So I gave myself a time box and I said, I can only spend 7 days building this site. So if you go to the site, it went live. Actually took 9 days because I decided to learn Node in the process. And, don't try to learn new stuff and give yourself a crazy timeline is my recommendation. So why do I think this is the wrong way to build stuff? What do you guys think? Why is it? So I built it. I got the data from the state. You can buy the data from the state. It cost me $100 for the data from the state. I built the site. It cost me 9 days of my own time, but I wasn't working on it. So
Find out if the people would want to use it.
right. I didn't find out if people wanted to use it. I didn't talk to any customers. Right. So how do you think it went when I started calling customers?
Not good.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, the first thing that happened was like on the 2nd, I think it was, I found another site that does the same thing. And I was super excited. No, man, this was awesome because they were doing the same thing. They were charging $200 a month. And they were basically doing the same thing. I'm like, this is sweet because you know what that tells me? It tells me that they're already used to paying for this. Somebody's already got a business. So all I got to do is execute a little bit better than that guy. And I was pretty sure I could do that because if you went to their site, they list 2 brokers in Minnesota. There are 1,800 brokers in Minnesota that have salespeople, and they had 2 on their site. So I'm pretty sure I can execute better than they do. But yeah, so when I call and say, for one thing, I didn't really know what to say. I'm Dale, I'm a software engineer. I'm doing I think I want to sell you something, but I'm not really sure if you want to buy it, right? It doesn't really go, I'm not a sales guy. But anyway, so what I wanted to talk about with that is you kind of know the premise. Does it make sense to you, right? It's hard for people to find brokers. It's geographically located. I got a site that's already charging for it, so I know brokers are paying for this. The data's there. So what I want to know is, this is me, right? I'm like, whew, I'm ready to go sell. But I'd like you guys to play the role here. Like, what are some of the early misconceptions that I might have had?
If you're using an informal network that's working fine, pay nothing.
Informal network, yeah. Right? They could be just finding brokers through whoever their net and real estate salespeople kind of should be okay at networking, right? We would hope. All right, I like that. Anything else?
Maybe the people who charge would be the people who are looking for a broker versus the people who are listing.
Yeah, maybe a new salesperson who's trying to find a broker for the first time might pay. Maybe a salesperson who's at $6 million wants to get to 12. Maybe they'll pay. Yep.
Well, messages on maybe you're not allowed to collect money. Like, you know, if they're paying for jobs, it'd be like.
Maybe. Yep. Anything else?
If that other company only has 2 customers, maybe your market's a lot smaller than it is.
Yeah, maybe it's tiny. Right? For a while there was like $200 a month. I need 2,000 customers.
If someone wants to find brokers, why don't they look it up in the yellow pages?
I'm a developer. I forgot about the yellow pages. Somewhere in the 90s. It didn't quite, the yellow pages.
Dex Online.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, as a salesperson myself, right, I Googled for it. I didn't have the difficulty. So.
But if you found all that data for $100, what stops someone else from getting a hold of us for $100 too?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I'm so brilliant. I'm going to execute better than my competitor. I'm going to get everybody listed. It's only going to cost me $100. And I thought, well, it's only going to cost them $100 to catch up. Okay. Anything else?
Well, you might have found the other company that had a $200 entrance. Maybe people weren't willing to pay any more than $200. Maybe that was the purpose.
Yeah.
You were trying to go for.
Right. And I mean, who knows what they need for analytics in the background? I mean, there's all kinds of, kind of in the business side of things, all kinds of things to around. I didn't know any of that, and I didn't know any of that because I didn't go talk to my customers. Now, so what I'm going to do is I got the rest of this month. I'm going to do one startup a month. So I'm doing RE broker list this month, and I have a few days left in the month yet where I can go do some sales, and I'm hoping by the end of the month I have a customer, but maybe I won't. But what if I don't? Well, I learned something, right? I learned that this might not be a good business idea, and it took me a month to do it. Right? It took me a month to abandon this idea. Or maybe next month I'll come back and I'm like, I got 2,000 customers. I'm going to Hawaii. See you guys later. So I guess you all have startups. What I'd like you to do is break off into groups of like 4 or 5, without shuffling around too much. Try to talk to each other about what are some of the misconceptions you can identify in your own business. Some of the things that you're thinking about in your own business that you could validate now before you go talk to anybody else, before you go do anything else. How's that sound? Sound good?
All right.
What's that? Can't hear you.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys are so energetic. It's like 8 o'clock. We've had pizza. Just spend like 5 minutes. So talk amongst yourselves.
You do asset tracking.
Oh, it's very interesting. So, talk to you. Yeah, I did too. It's really good stuff. I mean, I don't have any sort of fund on this stuff. What is the thing that
something went wrong with them, I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
We have a platform that takes data from any industry. The platform we can also magic on it from Boolean and very fast, very big data. Something you can design for
but also, you know, so a lot of times I'm also comfortable with going.
Yep.
And so, part of it is there has to be a reward because I lost my own it's distracting. It's really pain.
Just when he went live about a year ago. So we're trying, and then he had a bunch of hobbyists who were on the platform very high.
Yeah, I think actually good.
And now it's
Basically, you guys get around the scene.
not yet.
So you upset your customer. Are you going to
We'll be embedded in his best friend or family will be looking for
Video producers. So I started looking around. Nice material.
Yeah, so
right out of the dry
in the last
and so did design, found out that laser related design that took about 2 months.
Yeah.
So you drop off the roof.
Must be nice. I have a hard one.
It's one way. That's what you, when you see something. That's it. Two things.
Yeah.
They're different.
There's a lot of capabilities put into the thing. So from rubber stamps, stamping,
I'll give you an example. This is kind of a strong example. Yes.
Yeah, you need to get that tattooed on your leg.
Yeah.
That's fine.
This guy sells these. Yes, he's got probably something about he sells those across the country.
Yeah.
I know what that line is. It's not.
He does well enough. I haven't tried it. Well, I just took the gloves in my pocket.
The thing that I see.
Now, how do you
That's why I love the what they do is really interesting.
I signed up for some price points,
you really don't know where it is. Right. So it's checked into there.
That's amazing.
But it's difficult to say.
That's
why I usually want to do that rotation. How far is it started?
They were.
Product and they were in the things you stick it on the card.
So they were selling
How far away can you take? Right, start throwing a wall. You can put 20 of your gateways in Bridgedale. They'll tell you which ones in the
Yeah, it gives you enough information to tell us also.
Yeah, so now I kind of need safety, and solid items to launch onto
In construction, it's all about efficiency. I have a project coming up. That's what I did.
Yes,
So that's
okay.
the most.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then a lot of people ask me,
Yeah,
well, how
that's
can I
right.
get
Sounds like
more?
blessings that you-
They don't want to be.
So you're just checking and moving around.
All right.
3 in the morning. You're supposed to move around.
We'll try to wrap it up.
You know, get it done until you want to. But it just, it depends on the problem.
I'd love to have you, how do we get you involved? I don't know. Tell me. All right, clap 3 times if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Clap 3 times if you can hear me. Okay. So what did we learn? Anybody, anything? I learned a lot of great stuff talking to Brian. So, anybody want to share their misconceptions or anything that they would have learned in this?
I think one thing that was common I felt between what you and I talked about was the importance of partners. So the idea that came up for hers was reach out to small bankers that might be able to help with her particular issue. For me, it was reach out to temp firms that might put you on projects that could be a good beta test for them. So I think that was, that's what I saw at least, that there are partners that might also be trying to solve the same problem that you could leverage or augment what you're doing if you work with them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Identifying your key partners is one really important part of the strategy of any business, right? Anybody else?
So one of the misconceptions I'm working through is that past successes are your indicators of future successes. So there's an arrogance there of, oh, we were so great, we always before, we always build it, they'll come, and kind of a thing going on. So
That's interesting. I call it the Kevin Costner business model, right? Build it and they will. I think Kevin Costner was a terrible businessman.
Yeah, that was my realization, was that I'm assuming that the good news is I just made my market place to be 8 billion, so I have a lot of play.
Yep.
And price elasticity, so.
Yep. So, you remember the company called, was it Pet Food Warehouse, or they had the puppet? Pets.com, remember Pets.com? So Pets.com thing was like, dog food is $100 billion a year. If we get like 1% of it, we're gonna be great, right? Except for you can't really get 1% of pet food because it's a 50-pound bag to ship somewhere. It just doesn't work logistically, right? Or I also hear people talking about China, where they're like, China, it's like we only need to, 700 billion people in China, we only need to get like 0.01% and we're going to be retired. But the message that I hear, and I don't want to pick on it, but the message that I hear is I don't know who my customer is because I can't focus in on somebody who I can say, like, this is a class of similar people with a similar problem, right, who I'm going to solve their problem and they're going to give me money. So I know it might be a huge market, but I might challenge you to come back next month and share with us how you could start out with a smaller group that you could focus in on so that you could talk to them and you could maybe have a group of like 10,000 people in the United States or 1,000 in Minnesota or whatever that.
Well, I have more good news too.
Yeah.
There's competitors in this space, but they have very narrow and little market, market share.
That's great.
Yeah.
So another question to ask yourself is, for the competitors that have very little market share, why is it that?
Because it's the newest booming market in healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but like you might ask yourself, like, how can you grow your market share?
Oh, through the Kickstarter.
Okay.
To the beta test.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else? Anything?
Well, I think too, and I'm here tonight too to listen, obviously. I wonder sometimes, I think, have an idea. It always seems like a great idea. You want to tell anybody, because like you said, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else has got to say to them. If I tell somebody, like, they're going to take my idea. My goal is, I am in a bad situation. It's full of very many details. But as soon as that, you have to be quiet and it holds the date. But then I want to tell as many people as I can. So I don't know if the idea sucks, or I spend a lot more money. Right? So my goal is to find as many people who will listen. I don't care if it's a waitress at the restaurant, whatever. And then test it, because if there's not, because they'll make your idea better, as somebody else has said too. Sure. I think we want to hold it to ourselves, and we want to get it to a market stage and a launch stage and an advertising stage, and we don't even know yet if this bird we could get off the ground.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and I think the other thing is, I feel this way about myself. I'm blind, right? We're in love with our idea.
Yeah.
So you're blind, and so you don't often get advisors. I'm really also here looking for people to advise me, test me, challenge me, say that's stupid. What about this? You know what I'm saying? We tend to surround ourselves with people who build us up.
Sure.
Right? Instead of people who are looking to wear the hat on the other side. Who's my competitor? Who else is in the market? What have I thought about it? Because if it's out execution, it's the difference between living and dying.
Sure.
Not necessarily the idea. The sooner I could, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just wonder how other people in this room are dealing with that. How many people have shared their thing with 10 people? Okay, how many have shared it with 100? 200. Okay, maybe it's a different phase too. You're much further along.
Yeah. Well, one of the things.
You're commercialized.
Yeah, it all depends.
One of the things that I think Brian said was that ideas don't really have any value. No, unless I think you're a rare case, but for the most part, nobody's going to give you. No, but for the most part, nobody's going to give you money for your idea, right? They're going to give you money to execute your idea, right? So I often share everything, and often be as completely open as possible. The analogy that I use is when you go to the gym, do you go pick up the smallest possible weight that they have at the gym? Like you pick up the 1 pound dumbbell, whatever it is, and lift that and call that your workout? Why not? Because that doesn't give you anything new. And so it's the same kind of thing with your ideas in your business. You go find somebody where there's a lot of effort to make it happen, and it's that resistance, that effort that I think makes it pay off. But anyway, that's my bias. Okay, any questions? We'll skip that. Anybody want to do an elevator pitch? Anybody? Jade, I know you want to. So yeah, Jade. So with elevator pitch, this is the normal. If you guys haven't seen it, this is the normal elevator pitch format. I don't know. I haven't tried if you've seen this or not. And then we'd like you to add where you're at in your phase and what you need help with, if anything. So welcome, Jade. Okay, so we'll get the timer started here because we're going to be stripped on one thing. And go ahead.
All right, this is for content creators that are not well monetized. Tip jar is a digital tip jar with the benefit of super easy installation, frictionless installation for the content creator. And for the tipper, a single price point, a 25-cent click that basically feels more like a like than filling out a donate form. And we are in the early idea to development stage, and I need help with anyone who has done a TAM model. I'm trying to go through that right now. It's the technology acquisition model.
So this is similar to the, I don't know which gaming.
That was a little less.
So this is similar to, I'm not sure which game it is, but they have musicians that play with that you can listen to while you're playing the game, And then people put in a tip jar so you could tip the musicians. Is it like that?
Yeah. There are a couple competitors that
Okay.
actually 2 of them work with musicians. That
Okay.
seems to be sort of their thing.
Okay.
And I'm on board with that. Execution is everything. Like that's my mental. Like wear that as a T-shirt. Right now, their execution is a little bit spotty. I'm gonna say, for example, one of the sites that I went to, I can't figure out how you would actually install it. Like I'm looking all over the website, and there's no clear direction. Like, hey, if you're a user, this is what you do. Click here, go there. This happens.
Do you want to do? Anybody else want to do a pitch? It's bad. Anybody else want to get up on deck for a pitch? And thank you. I'm getting better and better at facilitating, right? What's your name?
John.
John.
Okay. For millennials who are looking or who are saving money for a larger purchase, Stash It is a free app that helps people save all the money that they save. Unlike other apps, Stash It lets you save money on demand for whatever you want. Right now we're in the idea/development phase. Essentially, we save money all the time, skipping coffee, using coupons. We're saving for something, but we never actually realize these savings. They stay in your checking account, and then you spend them someplace else. Stash It. Open the app, click the copy icon, transfers that $4 to your savings account. So you actually realize the savings.
Cool. All right, thanks. I forgot to say in advance, give people feedback on their 1-minute pitch, like as you socialize. Stop by and tell them like what you thought about it, and whatever, so that were you able to relate, how they could improve it. Especially if you were able to connect and like, I have that problem. Tell them.
Hey, John, you forgot to say what you need help with.
Talent development.
What kind of
Developers and designers for apps.
There were a couple of people who raised their hand looking for work. So.
Tim Jones, I'm working with nonprofits, trying to figure out how to help them do fundraising. Nonprofits aren't very good at fundraising. What we're putting together is a call out to use a daily deal format where you're buying the $20 pizza for $10, but instead of getting it for $10 the next time, who cares where you're going to buy it? With this one, $10, $5 goes to the pizza guy, $5 goes to the nonprofit, so that you care about buying from that guy. And when you go back to the pizza guy, he's going to give you a little discount and give another couple of bucks to the nonprofit, so that's the hook to keep you coming back. Same thing with a massage or an oil change or getting your nails done or going grocery shopping or what have you. So we're allowing the nonprofits to go to their donors and give them a way to give to the nonprofit rather than just write the check for $50.
Cool. And where are you at? And what do you need help with?
We're close to launching. I need help with developing and some of that stuff.
All right, cool. Thanks.
So I'm Joe Beyer, and we are targeting HR and sales teams within multinationals that are based here in the cities who have enterprise collaboration tools but don't know how to use them to drive revenue up or say costs down. And the new water cooler solutions helps them to implement that tool. And it's different because rather than just selling a tool, it's about the implementation of the tool. I'm in the idea stage. I've done a couple beta tests, and I'm looking for more ways to test it, especially around the willingness to pay.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. For real estate brokers who want to find a new broker to help them in the next phase of their career, RE Broker List is an online listing of brokers that makes it easy to connect with brokers in your community. Who wants to work for somebody not in your community? Unlike Realty Connection, RE Broker List has more than 3 listings in Minneapolis. Give me an idea. I'm in the launched phase. I need help with finding customers. So anybody who wants to talk to brokers. And I'm giving away equity like left and right. So But anyway, all right, so that was really great. Thank you all for your participation and coming here. I got to do one more thing. We're going to do a draw. Oh, before I forget, rate the Meetup event on meetup.com. After the fact, you can go rate it. And you can rate it whatever you want. But, you know, just kind of, however, just be honest. Yeah, exactly. And so now what we'll do is we'll go through the little prize giveaway phase here. Oh, and bear with me here. Hopefully I'm connected to the internet. I'm going to stop the hangout, people.